Hi there and welcome back to the Dev Corner. Today I want to talk to you about basically why I started dev programming in the first place, and that was a desire to write my own games. In the early days I tinkered on the Spectrum and on the Amiga, but it wasn't really until I started programming for DOS on the PC that I actually really got anything that you could consider an actual game, although a lot of them were barely above tech demo level. Looking back in my mind, it feels like I spent quite a number of years doing that, but if you actually look at it carefully, it was only really the 2 years I was at college that I was doing that. I wrote quite a few things during that time, all of which you can now play on my website if you want to, and I always had the intention of continuing on with that afterwards, but life kind of got in the way and it never really happened. You fall into a career writing websites and things like that, and suddenly you haven't got the time to write your own code for games and things. But writing code for websites hasn't been fulfilling for me for a long time, and I'm feeling very much now like it's time for me to get back to the root of why I started programming in the first place, and try some more game design again. The last game I officially released though was all the way back in the year 2000, and things have changed quite a lot since then in the world of technology and game development. The first big question you have to address when you're going to write your own game is, should you code your own engine? As the saying goes, should you reinvent the wheel? As with everything, there are pros and cons for each side of thinking. Creating your own engine will take a lot of extra time, but in the process of doing it, you will understand all of the inner workings of how it works, and so if something goes wrong, you've got a lot better idea of how to debug it. Whereas if you're using someone else's engine, the inner workings are kind of more of a black box that you don't know, and it can be a lot more difficult to find out what's wrong. But with a mature engine that's been around for a while, there are communities and forums of people who are using it that can help you figure out these things, and the more mature an engine is, the less likely it is to even break in the first place. Back in 1997, when I was coding my first games, having a separate engine was less of a thing then. Sure, you would reuse some code from project to project, but things were far less modular. It wouldn't be until later, until the likes of id and Epic would license their engines to third parties. Around 2003 time, I did start coding my own 2D sprite engine using Java, but I never quite got that finished enough to release a full game. Around 2011-ish, I started converting that code to JavaScript to run in a browser under the canvas tag, and that got pretty far in development. I started writing a basic maze type game as a prototype for it, but even now, 6 years later, it's still not a finished game. So it occurred to me recently that I've probably been spending far too much time coding engines, when if I used a pre-built one, I could focus more on the actual game design part of coding, and I would probably have more fun doing it. And knowing the limits of my math skills, I don't think I'd ever be able to develop a decent 3D engine on my own anyway. So using a pre-built one opens up way more possibilities. So, over the next year or so, I am going to try out 4 different engines and try and create some kind of little game prototype, because each engine will have their own strengths and weaknesses, and I need to find out which one suits my own particular style of programming and game design. The 4 engines I'm going to look at are Unreal, Unity, GameMaker, and Godot. That last one is apparently made by French developers, so I've heard quite a few people pronounce it as Godot, but I've heard the developers themselves in videos pronounce it both ways, so who knows. It's still kind of stuck in my head as Godot, and I think I'm going to start off with that one. I'll also probably try and finish off a prototype in my own engine, because it is about at least ready for a basic game. Technically, I have had a little experience with the Unreal pipeline back when I was making levels for Unreal Tournament and Unreal Tournament 2004, but it has apparently significantly changed since those days. Later on, I might also take a look at the CryEngine, but that's very similar in capabilities to both Unreal and Unity, so it depends how I get on with those first, I think. I will of course be making more of these videos talking about the development and my experiences with each engine as I go along, so if that's something that you would be interested in, don't forget to subscribe. If you have any opinions about any of those engines, let me know in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.